So I was busy making an episode of Prime Comments today, and the last one I went through went so long that I decided to make it its own segment, and then I will bring the actual Prime Comments episode out a little bit later, so it give proper attention to people that aren't just this hater. So here, enjoy my reading of a very long comment by a Nintendo hater, and then my response. Let's move on to the last one. Now, I warned this last one's really long. We're going to be spending a lot of time on it. But because it's so long, I'm not going to read the whole thing and then give comments at the end. I'm actually just going to go piece by piece and then chime in because I feel like it'll just be more coherent that way. Otherwise, I might be referencing something I said 5 minutes prior and it just won't make any sense. But let's dive into it. This last comment, probably the longest comment I've ever seen on YouTube, comes from Why Octopath Traveler is my favorite Nintendo Switch game. And this person, oh geez, I don't even have his name. 1 second. All right. So Tyler McGregor had this extra long comment that we're just going to dive right into. He says, Octopath Traveler is an old as shit game from the past. Games in early 2000 had that. It's missing important and standard features. It's worth less or not even worth $20. It's missing features like local co-op, online, co-op, and split screen. That is some lazy ass game and developers bunch of incompetent programmers like Nintendo is. Octopath Traveler is a waste of money. So let me start there. So your argument is that it's an old game, based on an older style, which is true, but that it's not even worth $20 because it's missing features like local co-op, online co-op, and split screen. So your complaint is that its features it's missing is that it's not a multiplayer game. I mean, is that the world we live in today, where if a game isn't multiplayer, it's crap? I'm sorry. Is Wolfenstein 2, when it released, not worth even $20 because it doesn't have any local co-op, split screen, co-op of any kind, or online multiplayer? Like, come on, man. You can't be so close-minded as to say a single-player only game is crap. Like, come on, man. You might personally enjoy multiplayer aspects a lot, and that's awesome. I just think it's a really silly comment to act like single-player games are not as relevant or not worth money. Anyways, it says, this game says it all. How much Nintendo cares about the Nintendo fanbase. Fun fact, before I continue, Nintendo didn't make this game. So it says nothing about Nintendo. Anyways, let's move on. Nintendo don't put effort into their games. Again, not a Nintendo game. Nintendo studies are a bunch of incompetents and lazy, inexperienced programmers. Of course, Square Enix is the developer, but Nintendo bought this game exclusive. Shove it into their lazy ass, like always, because Nintendo doesn't get proper third-party games. Either not even AAA third-party games, because Nintendo Switch U 2.0 is weak and falling apart. My Switch isn't falling apart. Is yours? I'm just curious. I haven't heard of a Switch falling apart at all. I mean, there's little issues here and there, but so was there with PlayStation 4 and Xbox and PCs. If we're going to talk about all the issues PCs can run into, or Macs. I mean, okay. Continue. The whole delusional Nintendo fan base with Peter Pan syndrome has some serious brain damage. You still don't see that Nintendo Switch U 2.0 is already outdated, and it has weak hardware, tablet, the APU, RAM is from 2010. Fun fact, the RAM it's actually using was brand new as of 2014. It's called DDR4. Anyways, let's go on. Well, you bought a Fisher's Price tablet with no features at all in 2018. When Xbox 2 and PlayStation 5 arrives in 2019 to 2020, the Nintendo Switch U will old as F hardware-wise, and the software cause it can't keep up with third-party games. Of course, you keep bragging about it. How well is Nintendo Switch U selling, and how well games are running on it? Under 340 to 520p, 720p, frame rates between 15 and 20 FPS. Here's the thing. What game on Switch runs between 15 and 20 FPS? I'm actually curious. I'm not going to argue your point on resolutions. Obviously, that I'm going to give you that. It's a fact. It can run down to like 360. I think it's 360p. Maybe it's 340, but 360p I think is what I saw with like Wolfenstein 2. But the game runs at basically a locked 30 outside of one area of the game that runs between 25 and 30 FPS. So none of them run at 15 to 20 that I'm aware of. There probably is an example of maybe an indie game or a poorly optimized game that you could point to that's running at that frame rate. Maybe you're talking about WWE 2K18 as an example. But that's the only game I could think of that would remotely come close to these numbers. That is not standard, nor is the 360p standard either. NBA 2K18 doesn't come anywhere close to that. But, okay. Anyways, let's move on. All of you did that in the Wii U era as well. You are the same small fan base, 14 million, who bought GameCube, Wii U 3 times. The Nintendo 3DS lines, 60 million, 3 times. Nintendo Switch U, it only has old ports like Zelda, Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, etc. So Super Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2, ARMS, Octopath Traveler, like that you're trashing on right now. Mario Tennis Aces, Kirby Star Allies. None of these are new games. These are just old ported games from Wii U era. And I don't get how you could talk about how it's the same fan base who bought GameCube and Wii U and did it 3 times over again. Hardly anyone bought Wii U. It's already outsold the Wii U. And it did that in less than a year. So, okay, let's move on. And by the way, in case you're wondering, because your sales figures are off, the sales figures are already at 19 million. Probably over 20 once we get the final updated figures. Moving on. It's like the old Wii U era all over again and again with Nintendo delusional fan base full of man-childs and delusional kids. You have a mindset like a child. You're just a bunch of pedos with Peter Pan syndrome who keep rotting Nintendo's, downstairs area. You Nintendo fans should be ashamed, disgusting. Nintendo people like you are the worst kind on earth, rich, spoiled man-childs with Peter Pan syndrome, with those Nintendo syndromes. You should be ashamed of yourself. Keep playing your Nintendo Cinderella games on your Nintendo Switch U 2.0 quality, like a Fisher-Price tablet. When open your mouth, you're full of shit, like Wii U era hyping up things and delusional YouTube channels who hyping shit up. Nintendo lost, like always. They losing and losing, like always. On the market, on third place. You keep buying before the product of Nintendo. You think, why does not Nintendo have proper multiplayer features and modes in games? Because they are incompetent bunch of lazy engineers, hardware-wise, and lazy programmers. Nintendo games missing basic features. There is not even a need for servers. A game can be programmed with modes like local host, online host multiplayer, online, co-op, and split-screen mode. If the new president, Shigeru Furukawa, don't pull it off, their Nintendo would kick some serious asses and kick some old delusional, counts, for example, Miyamoto and Reggie, out at Nintendo headquarters. If not, they're going downhill as a company, and they're going straight third party. We've already seen that they have mobile phone because suddenly they need money. By the time the Xbox 2, PlayStation 4, I think he meant 5, launches with new high-end specs and features we have never seen before, Nintendo Switch U has lost sales. It's already down, and the sales are going to write down on third-party games. You want to know why and why not Rockstar never ever release a game on Nintendo consoles? But they released LA Noire Remastered, which they also brought to Xbox One and PlayStation 4 on the exact same day. Well, Rockstar's never brought a game to Nintendo, right? Let's continue. Well, Nintendo is beyond ages. They are beyond decades hardware-wise, and especially OS feature-wise. They can't seem to figure it out, can they? Here's the thing. You have some legit criticisms in there. The OS is an example. It's missing themes. It's missing some of the charm out there. Missing folders. Folders is kind of a thing I think should happen. I'm not going to say the Switch OS is perfect, but a lot of what you're talking about makes literally no sense. Outside of the fact that there's a bunch of incomplete sentences, that's on you. Nothing I can do about that. I'm not sure if that's education-wise, if that's just the way you talk on the internet, and that's not really how you would write a school paper. I don't know. And the fact that this is all one massive paragraph that combines with previous comments I made, it's just, why? What makes you, like, all you're doing is sitting here hating, talking on a bunch of stuff. Like, Nintendo has local hosts, peer-to-peer gaming. They also have server gaming. Like, so much of this is just not true. They have games with online hosts, multiplayer, online, co-op, and split screen. They have games that do that. They've had games that did that dating back to the damn GameCube era. That's not new. What Nintendo is missing in basic online functionality has to do with friending people and messaging those people and voice chat, not the actual act of playing games online. All of that works fine. They've had these kind of experiences. But for some reason, every game has to be online and multiplayer for you to care anyways. That's already an issue that only you have. Because PlayStation 4 and Xbox have games that are just single player too, with no online aspects. Anyways, the only hope for Nintendo and Nintendo fan base is Shintaro Furukawa. He might be the only savior out there for the gaming community. If he could pull it off with Nintendo, then no one else can. Phil Spencer did a lot and made fans' dream come true with his Xbox engineers. Same goes for Sony. Sony always won on market and on gaming, cheaped out on the quality. The lazy engineers at Nintendo cheaped out of the quality of Nintendo Switch U 2.0. Bad build quality, very bad hardware internal components, very bad plastic. They could have gone much better. Wii U was never a bad idea. It just missed important things that all, like a high spec 12 gigabytes of RAM, APU, CPU 2.8 gigahertz graphic bandwidth at 2 to 4 gigs. You're talking about specs that don't even exist in the Xbox and PlayStation. What are you talking about? They missed the boat. They missed the boat with Wii U by offering specs that were on par with the systems that were out at the time. Nintendo missed the boat by not anticipating the new generation of hardware. Yes, but the new generation of hardware didn't even do what you're talking about. What? Where is this coming from? That you're just making things up and throwing it out there. 12 gigabyte APUs that were on the level of what PlayStation and Sony were doing were only available in high-end gaming PCs that were $2,000 plus. $2,000 plus. Oh my gosh, man. Come on, use your brain. Use your brain a little bit. Switch Pro main console with 2 cartridge slots, 3DS to play those games on it, Wi-Fi, 2x USB 3, Bluetooth, blah, 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 and then a Switch Pro tablet with all the important features, APUs. Like, he's just making up things that don't exist. All these things he's talking about for what could be a Switch Pro or a Switch 2.0 are things that are not technologically possible today. So, anyways. I love when people talk about how, like, they know things, but they really don't. Anyways, the next thing he says is 1 gigabyte of, I guess, VRAM he was talking about. 8 gigabytes of standard RAM, even though we just said 12 earlier. A battery that's at least 20,000 milliamp hours. So there's another, $150 tacked on. Better plastic quality. Sure, I guess. I would argue they should just have better heat dissipation, but I digress. Modern architectures. It's architecture from 2015, which is a modern architecture. In fact, the architecture in the Switch is technically more modern than what's in the Xbox One and the PlayStation 2, and in some ways, more modern than the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X. But again, that requires you actually knowing anything about architecture. Anyways, I don't know. I said newer architecture, not more powerful. There is a difference between actual performance, raw performance numbers, and architecture. Moving on, he says Gorilla Glass protection. I could argue it should have a Gorilla Glass screen. Although the reason they didn't go with a glass screen is because if you drop your Switch, it shatters. Whereas if it's a plastic screen, it's not going to shatter. It's a give or take there. They actually went with plastic because it's more durable. It's actually really cheap to go with Gorilla Glass. It's very common. They could get it for almost the same price as the plastic ones. Anyways, it says Nintendo could easily absorb some cost and sell the main Switch console for $399 and the Switch tablet separately. It's all possible. It's just Nintendo has to do the right things and get those industry contracts going with NVIDIA hardware manufacturers to get some discounts for mass productions. Shintaro Furukawa might be the only one who could save Nintendo, make your Nintendo fanbase dream come true. Makes no sense to me because he's talking about things he doesn't understand at all. What he is asking for would not be available in a $399 system. The specs he is giving would be almost a high-end PC. Like, we're talking, it would be over $1,000 for the Switch he's dreaming of here with today's technology, which doesn't even exist in the form factors he's talking about. Man. Let's go on. Like, eat some cost, Nintendo would have to eat, like, it would be such a huge profit loss for them. It would make no sense. Moving on, he says Switch 2.0 is going to end up like the Wii U era. Those Nintendo Switch U 2.0 owners are some pathetic people. It's a small, only 14 million fan base who bought the Wii U, Nintendo 3DS 3 times, then explain it automatically why Nintendo always lost on the gaming market since the Nintendo 64. Not true, because the Wii sold 100 million units, more than the Xbox and Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and then the DS sold 150 million, which is 70 million more than the PSP. Now you could talk about how maybe overall gaming's Nintendo's market share wasn't over 50%. But let me add that up. So 250 million sales during that generation were Nintendo's market, whereas you had 80 million for PlayStation 3, 80 million for Xbox 360, so that's 160 million, and then another 80 million for PSP, bringing that total to 240 million. Wait a second. You're telling me that Nintendo owned more than 50% of the market at that time across all of gaming? But I thought you just said since the N64 era, they've never owned the market. More than a 50% market share would tell me they own the market. Even if you count this generation, there's 70 plus million, almost 80 million 3DSs sold out there, which is really damn close to the total sales of the PlayStation 4. And if you want to throw the Vita sales in there, fine. Sony's got a nice little lead, but then you have to throw the Wii U sales in, which then brings the Wii U and 3DS sales total quite near the Vita and PlayStation 4 total. But is the PlayStation 4 dead? See the logic you're using? You're throwing this logic out here that there isn't a large consumer base for Nintendo products when the sales figures prove you wrong. It's really strange. Anyways, let's move on. If Shintaro Furukawa doesn't change that, then Nintendo goes down third party. The Switch 2.0 are some small, I don't like that word, fan base with Peter Pan syndrome, who keep playing Nintendo Cinderella games all day, and it clearly shows Nintendo's fan base have worse mental issues and mindsets like a man-child. Then he goes on to list the largest companies in Japan. I actually found where he got these numbers from. It's old data, but that's fine. What's missing in here is all of these reportings are basically based on the total amount of revenue that's coming into companies. And no, Nintendo doesn't have more revenue than car manufacturers. Sony, who doesn't make all the revenue off of gaming, by the way. But what's missed in here is that Nintendo, based on the information I was able to find, and this was as of 2016, 2015, I'm not exactly sure what it is today because all the current numbers aren't always fully up to date. Someone's got to compile it. But Nintendo, as of 2016, was the second most valuable company in Japan based on pure net value of the company. What I mean to say is they were ahead of Sony because Sony has so much debt. Sony has almost as much debt as they have money coming in, meaning that Sony is barely breaking even or barely coming ahead, whereas Nintendo not only has billions of dollars in the bank, Nintendo has zero debt. Can you believe that? A company as large as Nintendo rocking zero debt. They don't borrow money from anybody. They don't go in debt. Nintendo, like when you talk about Nintendo going third party, that would mean that Nintendo's doing bad financially. Yet Nintendo is one of only two major Japanese companies to have zero debt. You want to know why? They work on a zero debt policy. They don't sell things for a loss or don't do it at a significant loss for a large period of time. And they do not worry about borrowing money because they don't need to, because they invested wisely and they have so much banked up that they could literally coast on their banked up money for the next 50 years. So Sony couldn't do that. If Sony was losing money every single year, and they had to worry about, what are they going to do for the next 50 years if they're losing money? They have zero money in the bank. They would default on all of their loans, and they would go bankrupt and out of business because they have so many debts. They have so many accrued debts that they owe. So, yes, Sony has more revenue coming in, but it's actually a thinner and smaller overall profit margin than Nintendo has. Does this matter? Not really. None of this matters at the consumer level, other than the fact that Nintendo's nowhere near going third party. But whatever. You guys can look at all those figures for yourself. I'll put a link down to where I got my information on Nintendo, being the second leading company in Japan. And a lot of Nintendo's holdings are actually in the USD and not the yen, because the yen fluctuates a lot. So Nintendo keeps a lot of their capital held in US banks. It's actually kind of interesting. They're not the only Japanese company that does that, by the way. But they're one of several that do that because the yen is a very fluctuating income. They like to keep it at a more stable thing. So a lot of it's kept in USD. Anyways, next up. He says, facts. Nintendo fanbase is delusional as rich, spoiled kids who can't seem to figure out what Nintendo is doing for a shady business practice and anti-consumer practices to them. Nintendo does a lot of shady things. It goes from the Fisher-Price fixing products for years, stealing patents from Western companies. Let's hope European Commission for Consumer Rights and Laws is going to take down Nintendo and force them to repay bills, $200 million at least, and give them with an export blocked for 2 years. They're not going to block the exports of Nintendo products. What's happening is Nintendo has... So, by the way, it's not just Nintendo. Sony and Xbox actually have this going on as well. They're just complying quicker. They have this thing with their warranties where some wording and some language in their warranties is not legal. This has been fixed in the United States warranties, but it hasn't been fixed over there. And there's some other trade things with the online accounts. And just some other issues Nintendo has going on over there legally, but I don't know why this guy pretends to know anything about this stuff because they're not the only company doing it. Google just got hit with a massive fine for doing very similar stuff in Europe. They're fine. Nintendo will probably be fine too. Anyways, it says the European Commission for Consumer Rights is going to get you soon enough, Nintendo. They're watching you already like they did to Apple and Microsoft because Apple and Microsoft are in such big trouble after all of that. Their products are completely banned. Anyways, another true story is Nintendo Switch owners are the same fan base who bought a Wii U, or have 2 or 3 Nintendo 3DS already, so that explains it like always. It's the same fan slaves. That doesn't make any sense. A lot of people that bought Switch, a lot of people I know with a Switch, never owned a Wii U or a 3DS. And the ones that did, they owned one or the other, and they bought one Switch. Anyways, alright, I mean, I guess, could you say all the people that bought a PlayStation 4 are the same Sony slaves that bought a PlayStation 3? The logic here is just infallible. Nintendo fanbase is either kids or grown men, man-childs with mental issues. Nintendo fanbase is never going to change because most of the fanbase is the same fanbase from Wii U and 3DS, with full of kids and man-child with mental issues and illnesses. They all delusional kids, slaves to an anti-consumer company, Nintendo. Nintendo still copy Western ideas and cultures. Example, characters from Disney and Robin Hood, etc. Even though a lot of the characters Disney they got from other places and they're actually not their original properties, but story for another time. And especially European mythologies. So Sony and Microsoft have never used mythologies from other cultures in their games? Or other third-party companies? Assassin's Creed is literally built on the back of history. Anyways. It says Nintendo stole a lot of its ideas in European mythologies. Zelda, Peter Pan, and Robin Hood. Okay, anyone that wears green, I guess. Mario, Hans from Bugs Bunny. Oh boy. Bowser is Carlos from Popeye. Peach, Cinderella from Disney, and a bit Daisy from Popeye. So it's part of 2 completely different characters with completely different personalities. Okay. Daisy herself is from Mary Poppins with the umbrella, and a bit from Disney-born Roshkins, but Peach has an umbrella sometimes too. And that's like 5 characters out of a library of several thousand characters Nintendo has. That doesn't even cover Luigi or Toad or any of the other characters in Mario. What about Goombas and the Turtles and all? Anyways, that should just talk about Mario. We're not even getting into like, Rosalina. Who's Rosalina a copy of? Like, oh man. By the way, now it's officially Player Essence on Super Metal Dave. I hate when other YouTubers are brought into this, but it's his comment. Are deleting other people's opinions in comments. I can understand if you're talking about deleting your stuff and banning you. Did you read your own? Like, does this even make coherent sense? It says, by the way, Super Metal Dave 64 Player Essence tossing biased news like other Nintendo delusional channels. Player Essence is the worst, like the Wii U era. Player Essence, he was always wrong. What comes out of his mouth, a bunch of lies. He's not a real gamer, just a liar and comment deleter. Player Essence deleting others' opinions and comments, very good job. So deleting, like, I don't know what he does on his channel, but deleting comments and opinions doesn't make the news wrong. Here's the fun fact about news. News is factual. It happened. It's a thing. There is rumors. Rumors isn't real news. Rumors are, exactly what they said, they're rumors. So setting aside rumor reporting, setting aside making opinion-based articles, or any opinions that come after the news reporting. Like, I give opinions after I report on news. The actual news itself is fact-based. Like, Octopath Traveler being sold out in Japan. It's a fact. Octopath Traveler debuting at number 1. It's a fact. Square Enix apologizing for the shortages and being unable to restock until August. That's a fact. Like, these are all facts, facts, facts. We could the Switch's sales, the fact that it's almost at 20 million, or is over 20 million at this point. Fact, fact, fact. It's like, this is just new. Like, these are facts. Like, news is facts. Like, there's no bias in facts. Facts are just information. You can hate the facts. You can deny the facts. You can make crap up like every Switch owner was just a Wii U and 3DS Nintendo slave. Just like I could say every PlayStation 4 owner obviously was a PlayStation 3 and PSP and Vitas. They were all slaves. They always won the same systems with the same games. Oh. It's so frustrating when you read a comment like this. I'm not actually upset. It's clearly a Nintendo hater. But it's frustrating when you read comments like this because it puts a bad light on fans of other platforms that I don't think those other platforms deserve. This guy can't be viewed like some people want to call him a Sony F. I'm not going to say the word. Or an Xbox drone or whatever. Or a PC Master Race kind of guy. I don't want to even dignify calling him one of those because that would suggest he represents those fan bases, and I don't think he does. Because everything he is saying, you can literally turn it around, replace it with PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, Vita, and PSP, or replace it with Xbox 360 and the Xbox, OG and Microsoft Windows. You could throw all of that in there and hit all of his data. And all of his information would basically be the same thing. It would just an idiotic argument that makes no coherent sense, uses very little factual information of any significant note, and is just literally based on the idea that they don't like what Nintendo does. Therefore, Nintendo is crap. Nintendo is in the Stone Age. Nintendo is this, Nintendo is that. They blatantly ignore all of the issues that the other platforms also have. They ignore the other lawsuits the other platforms are also in. They ignore the fact that the arguments on who's buying the platform can literally be applied to all systems. And as for being in third place, I mean, if we want to combine Wii U sales in with Switch's sales, it might actually be ahead of Xbox. But setting aside the fact that Wii U sales are actually the start of this generation, Switch has only been out for a year and a half, and it's almost past the Xbox One lifetime sales. So sure, it's in third place. That's why multi-platform games sell better on Switch than on Xbox One. Anyways, folks, I'm going to leave it at that. I hate console wars. I don't, I just, these kind of comments are so idiotic to me. I just needed to reply because sometimes you just need to read a hater to remind yourself that everything is right in the world. Anyways, folks, I'm Nathaniel Rufflejans from Nintendo Prime, and if you like this video, you know what to do, and if you dislike the video, hit that dislike button, subscribe for more content, and I'll just catch you guys in the next one. Man, that last comment, what even was that? Seriously, guys, what? Remember, I'm the one that has mental issues. I'm not going to make presumptions of him, but he made a presumption of me. Go Brewers.